You're listening to the official podcast of the Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine, Texas Tales, with your hosts, Josh Shive and James Cossett.
Welcome back, folks. This is Texas Tales, the official podcast of the Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine. I'm your host, Joshua Shive, and I have my co-host, James Cossett. And today we have a treat for you. We have a special guest, Everett Johnson, the editor-in-chief of Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine, a guy that has more knowledge than he knows what to do with. But boy, he will tell you all about it. But James, what's happening, my man?
Not much. Yeah, my only problem with Everett is he's hard to get talking, he's very shy.
I've never had that challenge with him. He's definitely let me know all the good, the bad, and the indifferent.
He really is that generation that's so special that can just start talking. You're kind of like, that really doesn't answer the question, but by God, is this an interesting damn story?
He will answer a question and tell you 3 stories within that question somehow, and it's awesome all at the same time.
Well, he makes me an audience member where you're just sitting there listening. I haven't talk, respond to this, because it is just he is interesting, and it's kind of funny because he's got a very, like, especially generationally, I think the conservation movement, he really was kind of a standalone figure. Like I said, generationally, I think that kind of moving towards our era, it's a little bit more accepted to be very pro-conservation. Right. Like, I think it's very culturally savvy. He kind of is a standout character in that he's one of the only, like, older people I know that is very active in the conversation.
Yeah, no, he definitely has been that way my entire life. I mean, when I was a kid growing up and going fishing with him, going hunting with him, everything was by the book. We always had our licenses. We always had everything we needed, made sure we had our plugs in our guns, made sure that we definitely followed the rules. And he's always been a big conservationist. He's always been just a steward of learning of the Gulf Coast, everything hunting and fishing. And, it's been very fortunate for myself to be able to tap into that and learn a lot from that.
Yeah, no, that's a hell of a resource to have in your corner. But, I noticed you probably had to break out the parkas this weekend. What did y'all do?
So we went hunting again. If you're not hunting over Thanksgiving, what are you even doing with your life? So we went hunting. We had a really good weekend. I had my cousin out there, his family, and we were able to definitely, the deer were moving. The big deer were moving. They were chasing. Rut was in full force. My daughter ended up getting a really nice 11 point. And it was a moment where I've never seen this deer before, but it's that time of season where a good doe goes by and here he comes following her, and he followed her to the wrong spot. So got my daughter. She killed that 11 point. And then my cousin, he has 3 kids, and he was able to get all 3 of his kids really mature deer. And it was just an all out great weekend and very enjoyable. One of the boys it was his first buck. And if you ever get to experience that
Special.
With your own kids, with someone else's kids, when you watch them get their first kill, first deer, first fish, whatever it may be, the excitement and the joy. And one of the cool things about our lease is anytime a kid brings a deer to the camp, there's like 15, 20 kids running at them, excited, joyful, congratulating. Nobody's upset because they didn't get a deer. It's just an amazing moment where everybody is excited for you and not down. So it's just a grateful thing to have.
That's such a crazy moment too, getting your first deer. Like, you're like, it really is like such a high pressure situation. And has he been around deer before? Or has he seen, like, down deer?
So he has, and he's been around his older siblings. And I think, I can't remember if he's shot a hog or not, because that's normally what we like to start everybody off on, is a hog. But he's definitely understands what's going on, and he's put a lot of years in of preparation before he made that shot, which is another thing what we were big on.
Well, and it's that anticipation. That's the reason I ask is because if you've never been around deer, you really can't take like the gravity of the situation. But if you have, you always have that moment of like, God, like and like you said, y'all seem like you have a great culture there. But we're all human at the end of the day. You have it in the back of your mind of like, he got a deer. He's not even good
Well,
at
you know what
this.
the funny thing was? His daughter, so my daughter, she shot her 11 point, the 300 blackout, smoked him, dropped him right where he stood. And his daughter, they were hunting in another stand and they had a really nice mature 8 come out. Or actually, she was hunting with her mom and she was sending us pictures of the deer because she wasn't real sure if it was a mature. And
Great strategy.
we were, that's a shooter. Let him have it. And she ended up missing the deer. And as a kid, when you miss a deer, there's that sickening feeling. And when we got back to camp with my daughter's buck, she sucked it all in, was just very excited for my daughter, for her cousin, and was congratulating her and hugging her. And I'm so proud of you. And even in that trial of, oh man, I'm sick because I can't find this deer or I missed this deer, but I still don't want to let that bring down someone else who is in a
No,
joyous moment.
that's awesome. Well, that's incredible. And it's hard because like it is that primal thing of like when you lose a fish at the boat, even if it's not your best fish, you have that moment of like, oh man, and none of us are relying on a fish or a deer for survival, but you still have that like sinking feeling of like,
Right.
damn. Well, you're kind of you promoted me to use my blackout this weekend, and so we have our limited doe season. So we have a couple places where we don't have MLDs that you only can take them during the license period of this like 4-day hunting period outside of muzzleloader and archery. And one of the places is kind of small, slightly. It's not residential, but it's becoming residential, unfortunately. And so I don't feel comfortable utilizing any of my big rifles there, but I know there's a safe direction I can shoot. And I was like, you know what? I've got that CVA Scout we were talking about last weekend. And Josh was telling me how great this blackout is for shooting deer. I'm going to try it. I was absolutely blown away with how well that round performed.
Really?
It's a killing fool, Josh. I mean, this is the best kept secret in the industry.
Hey, but I will also say this, and this goes with every gun, just kind of like what we've talked about. Shot placement is always key. And no matter what gun you're using, if you make a good shot, you will have a dead animal. And
a lot of people kill them with 222s and everything
absolutely.
else.
So I always say, even, with that 300 blackout, and it's such a good family gun, as I call it, the kid gun. But there can be times where, like with the story with my son, it can be a little bit devastating.
Well, and most of the criticism, I think a lot has to do with the range
Right.
limitations that the round has, which is fair. But on this particular hunt, this was a pretty unique situation, and I'll shoot you the image. My brother got it on the cellular camera, so the way the stand's facing, I sit for archery, and it's southeast of the feeder, which is it's naturally we almost never have a cold front, so it's like that's the way the wind, or I guess it's technically northwest. I'm sorry. And that's the way we always have a southeast wind when I'm sitting there, so that's the way I don't blow downwind. Problem is I can't rifle shoot that direction now. We got somebody building a house back over that way, so it's like, man, not a safe direction. So I literally put on my turkey hunting little ghillie suit that I got, popped a squat next to a post oak at about 65 yards out. And I could not believe, and I was, granted, I had the bog, the tripod, or death grip. I had it set at the right height. I had the round chambered, scope set, and I literally just left it on 3 power. I think it's like a 2-6. It's the little Sig Sauer Tangos MSRs, and I had the light already on it. And I literally just was like, if the deer is not on the left side of the feeder, I can't take a shot because I'm gonna have to move so much to position. And I had it set there, and lo and behold, this doe walks through with the white part of her neck literally right on the crosshairs. And I'm like, well, that works out.
That's a moment where, you know what, it is what it is.
It was so funny too because I didn't know she was there. She had a little buck with her, and the crazy thing is, subsonic suppressed, shot her. Buck didn't know what happened. Buck just sat there, kept feeding. Eventually meanders off, and comes back, kind of tries to get her. He sees me, spooks. Next morning, at the same feeder eating. Next afternoon, at the same feeder eating. I mean, none of these deer, there were in total 5 deer out, and I never saw the doe. She came in from the backside of the feeder, and I was sitting in some tea weeds, which, man, I can't wait for dove season. There was a ton of doves back in there. But she came from the backside, and literally, I mean, no other deer knew what happened until I finally was like, all right, I'm pretty sure she's down, and I stood up.
Oh man. Well, it sounds like we both had great weekends, and I think we are at that point where we go ahead and bring in the big dog. We hopefully folks can get a little bit of good storytelling from the Everett Johnson himself, and maybe we'll learn a little bit. Thank you for watching Texas Tales. Go check us out now on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. It is at Texas Tales Pod. You don't want to miss out on all the stories from some of the greatest guides, wildlife biologists, and people on the Texas coast. Go check us out now. Saltwater Fishing Magazine. How we doing, guys?
Go ahead, James.
Well, pretty good. We got the big man in here, so I got to be
Lord.
careful what I say.
Well, I don't know about all that, but yeah, I'm happy to be here and help you guys kick this thing off. And actually, I got a lot to learn about what is a podcast and, how are we going to use it and so forth. But hey, I love to talk about fishing and the outdoors and the magazine business in particular, and what we've tried to accomplish in publishing. And I would just like to say at the kickoff here that when we started this little publishing project in the 1st of March, it'll be 25 years. We said that we wanted to help everybody who was interested. We wanted to help them to become better anglers, more educated, not only in how to go about their fishing activities, but to learn more about the resource and to learn more about how we could become better stewards. I said from the get-go, if we're going to help people discover how to catch more fish, then I think that we also have the responsibility that we need to make them better stewards of the resources that they're enjoying. And there's been an awful lot of water go over the dam in the 24 years that we've been publishing, and we've learned a lot. I've been to so many seminars, I've been to so many presentations. I love to read. I read a lot. I guess you could call me curious.
Of course.
I was just showing Pam today. I dug a book out of my modest little library, and it was The Fecundity of the Spotted Sea Trout. And
Oh my goodness.
I was showing her there's a section in that book. It's a scientific work. There's a section in that book where they describe the effects of changes in salinity on spawning success. And Pam said, "Hey, that's a good topic for y'all on the podcast with things happening in the bays, potentially very, 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 very big changes with the potential to construct to build maybe as many as a half dozen desalination projects." And we're not the last word. We're not experts, but we are hopefully savvy enough to recognize that if you interrupt the salinity regime uh, that has existed over time by um, discharging high salinity effluents or the discharge into the bay, and it would drive the salinities up. It might have some, you know, negative effects on the environment there,
Right.
on the uh, on the ability of our most coveted species to reproduce and to grow and thrive, and not just the game fish, but what are they going to eat?
Right.
The bait
And
fish
that's the
got to
The
thrive alongside of them.
absolutely, and
the water.
that's the goal, is to ensure that we leave to the next generation what we were able to enjoy in our generation. And that's kind of where we wanted to take it back to, because and this is probably, like you said, off the record, a 3-week conversation. We want to go all the way back to young EJ and what got him into hunting and fishing, where it all started. Dad, grandpa, where did it begin?
Okay, so I grew up in the hills of Western Pennsylvania. I lived there until I was 34, and it was work that brought me to Texas.
You got here as quick as you could.
Absolutely. I'm one of those guys, people say, well, I'm a native born Texan. Well, that's wonderful. Not like you had a choice, okay?
Right.
But I got here quick as I could. That's a fact. And my interest in fishing, honestly, goes back to the days when I wore diapers.
Wow.
Yeah. So we lived on a little farmstead, and it bordered a small stream. You know, here in Texas, we call them creeks. Back up in the hills of Western Pennsylvania, it's a creek. And
Yankee speak.
yeah, it was Big Run Creek, and it was a fertile little fishery. They even stocked it with trout in the springtime for put and take fishing. Um, but my deal back in the early days was a willow switch and a piece of kite string. Believe it or not, my mom used to fashion a hook with a straight pin.
Really?
She would bend it to resemble the letter J. Okay, we were hillbillies, right? And we didn't always have all the accoutrements of the modern day angler. But she
Right.
would take that straight pin and bend it like the letter J and tie it on the end of that kite string and take a couple slices of soft bread, dampen it, and mold it into a dough ball. And then take
Now,
it.
is that something that she came up with, or is that something that she
Oh, I
learned?
don't know. I mean, they've been doing that up there since,
Ah,
since Noah was running the ark. He was fishing off the ark way back when.
right.
And I guess everybody did it. Heck, I don't know. But we would put a little pinch of that dough ball on that homemade hook and just fling it out there. And these little shiner minnows, some of them might be 4 or 5 inches long, they would be attracted to that bread, that dough ball. And you had to be quick with hooking them. When they pulled on the string, you had to stick them. And believe it or not, guys, I had a great grandmother that used to eat those little minnows. She would use a scissor and lop off its head and split its belly, rake out its innards, and bread them and fry them. And they were a
Wow.
delicacy. You hear of people eating smelt, and that's a very popular little delicacy, freshwater fish. Anyway, yeah, it's how I got my start fishing. And I just progressed until, I wanted to fish in other places. My dad was very strict. Um, I guess I was about 4 or 5 years old and I hadn't learned to swim yet. And he said, well, you're only going to be able to go fishing if you've got somebody with you that can swim in case you fall in. We don't want you to drown. Oh, man, that was a big
That's
incentive.
fair.
Yeah. So, yeah, I learned how to swim, do the old doggy paddle, and then became quite a swimmer. And I got to riding a bicycle and go in all kind of different places. We had a lot of old limestone quarries up in that country, and unfortunately, those pits had been abandoned, and they would fill up with water, and they'd get fish in them. People would dump them in there. The state would stock them, whatever. And we had some golf course lakes that I used to fish on, and then I
Now, were
got
you fishing with bait or artificial?
in the beginning, we fished with mostly minnows and soft-shelled crawfish. Crawfish peel in the early spring, late spring, early part of summer, and evidently, so crawfish are a delicacy to us, and they would be a delicacy to the game fish in these bodies of water. And we go out there at night with a lantern or a flashlight. And when they're peeling, they're very vulnerable, and you just put your hand on them and cup them and put them in a bucket. And you maybe can catch more bait than you needed. This was a kind of a comic situation that developed one day. And they only stay soft for a day or two. The shell starts to harden up and they become, while they're soft, they can barely move because their exoskeleton, their shell,
Right.
is how they move around. So, anyway, I would put them in a box of moss and dampen it and put a lid on it and put them in the refrigerator, cool them off a little bit, would slow them down on their shell hardening, and that way they would remain viable as, primo bait for almost a week. Well, that kind of got in trouble with that strategy. My mom went into the refrigerator one day. So one of these crawfish got loose and he had become quite mobile. And here he goes. And my mom hollered for me to come in there. She said, get that out of my refrigerator. Get it out now. Get all of them out. Yeah, I kind of got in a little bit of trouble there, but we were always going fishing somewhere. We even in the wintertime, we fished through the ice. Now, to you all Texans, you say, wow, that's pretty retarded. Well, when the water's frozen, a couple, 3 months out of the year, and you're bound and determined to go fishing, you wait till the ice is safe. And some people go ice skating, and we'd go out and chop a hole in the ice and we'd fish through the ice. So yeah, the year I moved to Texas, my dad bought me a power ice auger for Christmas.
Now,
You haven't used it much since, I'm guessing.
No, actually,
he built some
I,
fence.
I moved to Texas in March of '86, and I gave it back. But when you are really into fishing of all disciplines, uh, before I had learned how to cast a fly line, uh, I would find a log alongside the stream and break a piece of bark off of it and lay a fly and a bunch of line in that, make it like a little boat and set it adrift down the current. And when it got down the stream a little ways, you flip it off, and now you got a fly, and it might be a stream that is so narrow and overgrown with brush that you can't cast a fly there.
Right.
But by golly, if you used a little floating boat method to get the present the fly, you'd be amazed what you could come up with. And
That's
so
a neat little trick.
yeah, we were involved in all these types of fishing, and there was when I got into junior high, I would go fishing in the morning before school. Now you got to understand something that in that North Country, it gets daylight a whole lot earlier than it does here in southern latitudes in Texas. It would be daylight at 4 a.m.
Oh,
You
wow.
didn't have to be to school until 8:30 or whatever for the homeroom bell would ring, and so I talked my mom into she would run me out to the trout stream, 4 or 5 miles away, and and I would fish. She would go back home and get my sisters and my brother up and get them ready for school and make them a lunch and pack all of our lunches and make them a breakfast. And then they would go to the bus stop and she would jump back in the car and run out to the trout stream and she would have my school clothes.
Oh,
And
my goodness.
and I
What a
would
mom.
I would sit in the back seat of the car while she drove me to school and I would change into my school clothes, and then she would hand me a sandwich. Now, contrary to popular belief, McDonald's did not create the Egg McMuffin. Okay. It was first known as the Egg McShirley. That's my mom's name. She would fry an egg and some bacon or a couple slices of lunch meat ham or whatever, some sausage, and make some toast, 2 pieces of toast, and assemble the sandwich. And it'd be rolled up in a piece of waxed paper. Now, there's something you don't see very often anymore. And I'd sit in the back seat and munch that sandwich. She'd pull up in front of the school, and I'd jump out of the car and go running in the front door of the schoolhouse as the homeroom bell was ringing. And she would take my fishing gear back home and my catch, and
Oh, wow.
she would clean my fish. And that's not all she would do in my outdoor pursuits. She would skin muskrats and raccoons. I was a trapper, and I was a hunter and a
And
fisher.
that's a big part of it is, when you have the people, your parents or your grandparents that are willing to do those types of things to ensure that you can see the joy in hunting and fishing and give you that ability.
Amen. Amen, Josh.
And I know you were there for me with that. So I am well aware of that.
I do think you owe him a box of crawfish in his fridge, but other than that,
So let me tell you a little story about our host, Joshua Shive. So, of course, I was when I got to Texas, the guys that worked for me at the plant in Navasota, I was hired to come to Texas and be the general manager, plant manager of Interstate Forging Industries at Navasota. And some of my guys that worked in the plant, um, believe it or not, they fished at Seadrift. Okay. And that's where I live today. I didn't get too far in terms of everything that I wanted, everything that I needed. I'm situated right here between Rockport and Matagorda. Some of the finest duck hunting, some of the finest coastal fishing. And of course, I had my kids involved in it, but they were growing up, and I had Pam's kids coming up behind my own kids. And Josh was, he was just eat up with going to the coast with me. And one day I decided that I was coming to the coast. I was going to knock off on Friday, and he convinced his mom that he could take Friday off school and come with old stepdad, down to the bay. And uh, we we had been working on duck blinds in the morning, and we were out in the airboat, but we took our fishing rod, and we were in the back of Condy Lake, almost into Fifth Lake, if you know this area very well. And uh, I was having a phone conversation with my boss, and Josh was a pretty curious little fella. I don't know, he was about 10 years old, maybe. And he was eavesdropping my conversation more than he was paying attention to my fishing, to his fishing. And he had a chartreuse top dog. Top dogs were all the rage back then. I think this was in like 98. They were brand spanking on the market.
Oh yeah.
And he he had it tied on, and he's standing on the bow of the airboat, and he's chunking it out there, and he walking the dog, but he's paying more attention to my phone conversation. Anyway, pretty soon he got totally distracted, and he looked back at where's his line he's looking for, and he said, "Hey, there's a redfish. It's got a top dog in its mouth. It's my top dog." They start winding it up, and the fish came tight, and it's thrashing around, and he's hollering and whooping. Now, you ain't going to believe this is the funniest part of the whole deal. He had forgotten where he was on the bow of the boat. The bow of any boat is a rather small piece of real estate. So he took one too many steps backward as he's fighting this big redfish. And the next thing I know, I hear kerplunk.
And this was what was it? The early November?
Yeah, it was maybe the first week or two of duck season.
Yeah, it was cold.
But we had a lot of fun, and that's why. And I picked this up from one of our former writers, Dickie Coburn. He crossed over. He fishes in that big pond where all the trout are 30 inches now. But he wrote for us for a long time, and he always ended up his story with "take a kid fishing." And man, when we lost Dickie, unfortunately, Dickie was in a car crash, automobile crash, and he did not survive. But Dickie's famous sign off on his it was almost like a byline with him, "Take a kid fishing." And man, I grabbed that and ran with it, and so did Chuck Uzzle. And I had my mind made up that with Josh and his buddy, his little school chums, and they were all maybe in sixth, seventh, eighth grade, ninth grade, long in that
Who was
age.
your favorite
My favorite of your chums?
of all the school chums?
Oh, I don't know. I used to love when Heath would always talk about he was going to catch a Big Daddy lunker.
Never did it.
Never did it. And you used to come to the bay and bring 3 or 4 of your buddies,
Mm-hmm.
and man, if they would fish we'd go fishing all day. And after we had been doing some fairly serious wade fishing, then we would run around the bay and look for some flocks of birds, even if there was only gaff top catfish under them. I mean, these boys were smoothied up with it, and we had a ball. And we would always, back then, we would catch a lot of fish, and we would take fish home for dinner. Heck, one day it was in the wintertime, they were out on the pier and they were throwing a cast net. And Pam and I were in the house. We were cleaning up. We were getting ready to go home. It was a Sunday afternoon. And Josh come running in the house and he's screaming, "Hurry, come quick. I got something in the net. I can't lift it up." So we went running out there and he had a sheep's head. I am not going to exaggerate, okay? That big.
Still to
Had,
this day,
had to
have
be
not seen a bigger sheep's head.
had to be 2 feet or longer. And I remember that it weighed like 6.5, 7 pounds. And the sheep's head had dove under the pier and got the net hung up, the cast net hung up on the barnacles on the pilings under the pier. Well, we ruined the cast net, but we did manage to hoist the big sheep's head up, and he barely fit in a 5-gallon bucket. That's a fact. So the more we talked about it, the more we decided that we would stay long enough before we left to go back home, because we had to go to school and go to work the next day. So anyway, I filleted the big sheep's head, and we had fried fish dinner. And if you've never filleted a sheep's head, I'm going to tell you what.
It's a chore.
Not only is it a chore, and you might want to use, for sure, an electric fillet knife or a chainsaw, whichever's handier. But the flavor, the texture of those fillets is superb.
Even when they get that big?
Yes, sir. Believe me, they were good. It was like the loaves and fishes. We fed Josh and his buddies and Pam and I, and it was just a wonderful cap on a great weekend. And every time the boys came to the bay with us, we took time to get them out fishing. We bought them fishing gear. We bought them waders. We bought them wading boots and wade buckets, and they would use shrimp or croakers or whatever. And then it wasn't too much longer until, I got them using soft plastics. And I told you the story about Josh's redfish that ate the top dog. And wasn't too much longer until those boys really got on to learning how to use lures. And man, they were crackerjack fishermen. They were even sight fishing, wading in the flats, and it was just like a second nature. And so, okay, long story going on there, but what I want to impress upon our listener: take a kid fishing, teach a kid about the resources. When you go out and you just don't clean the fish, you put the fillet knife in their hand and you let them learn how to do it. Now, the first time the boys did it, it looked like they cleaned them with a grub hose, but they did get better and they became skilled with the boat to the point where I would let them take my bay boat out. And we had rules about how far they could go, and they had to wear life preservers the whole time they were out there. We didn't want to lose a kid. And it was a wonderful family activity. And I'm so glad that we were able to do that. And I did it with my kids. My own son, I used to let him knock off school on Friday if he was doing well, and his grades were up to par. And man, we would come to the bay and we'd fish all day Friday and Saturday and go back home Sunday afternoon. And one of the things that I recall most vividly was watching these kids mature as anglers, actually become anglers, not
Right.
just not just romping around and wrestling and playing in the water, but becoming serious anglers. And I was so proud of them for doing that. And so it's been a long old journey, and we've had an enormous amount of fun. And I meet people all the time that say, "Man, we have really enjoyed your publication through the years, and we have so appreciated your work and your dedication to um, sportsmanship and conservation." And one thing that I think we can definitely uh, be proud of is that uh, we have always strived to instill conservation ethic. And when we get like when we've been so blessed with the people that write for us, uh, we couldn't have done what we did without those people with dedication every month. Uh, People call us up and say, "Hey, I got a story I'd like to see if you'd be interested to publish it." And I'd say, "Yeah, let's have a look." And it would be a story like I've been telling you about the kids going fishing, getting their wives fishing. Believe it or not, we've had people write us stories about getting their parents fishing. Their
Wow.
parents never had time to, and what better way to enjoy the outdoors than to take your mom and dad or uncles or kids or take them fishing and get them interested in this wonderful pastime. So
Absolutely.
I don't know
So
if I've rambled too far, boys. I don't know where else you might want me to head, but yeah,
Well,
I started in diapers on the banks of the Big Run. I ain't done yet.
you talk about the conservation installation, and a funny aside is your magazine was a treat to me as a kid. The little Valero down the street got it every other month, and if everything was going well, my dad would get it for me. And I remember the first time we caught a redfish that, it was my brother and I were kayaking. And I told him we had to put it back because we don't want to overfish. Because one of the articles that I'd read, like 13 years
Yeah,
old
yeah,
in
yeah.
your magazine. And I remember my brother's a lot older than me. He's like, "We can keep this one redfish. We're not entering the fishery." It's like the first one we'd caught in the kayaks ever.
Well, that's
But I literally was so worried we were overfishing the population with the one and only redfish we caught that day.
yeah. Well, and that's a great point. If we don't conserve, like Josh said a little while ago, we will not have a fishery as good as viable, a resource that is as wonderful to pass on to the next generation as we were so lucky to enjoy. And I've had lots of opportunity uh, with my uh, membership on the Coastal Resource Advisory Committee with Texas Parks and Wildlife Coastal Fisheries Division, and so many other presentations over at Hart Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies, and my friends at UTMSI, University of Texas Marine Science Institute. They taught us a lot. And we as Texans, we have a lot to be proud of. Um, we were the whole idea to spawn redfish and spotted sea trout in captivity for what they call stock enhancement. In other words, stocking fish to improve the resource. I've been on many stockings. I've been to the hatchery dozens of times. If you've never been to Sea Center or you've never been to uh, the hatchery down at Flower Bluff in Corpus,
that's the one that I went to,
the Marine Development Center,
the one in Corpus.
yeah, and up at Palacios, um, it was a Texas marine biologist, Dr. Conrad Arnold. He was the guy that came up with the idea that uh, trout and redfish could be spawned in captivity. And now these fish only spawn once a year in nature. Well, trout are serial spawners. They spawn multiple times in the warm months, but the redfish only do it once. And he came up with the idea that if he refrigerated the water and dimmed down the lights in the hatchery environment to simulate a winter season, that he could bring about an
More
artificial
spawning.
spawn. And he did it, and he pulled it off. And that's the basis for so many spawning, stock enhancement activity, not just red drum in Texas, but many species, all on both coasts, all three coasts, okay? The Gulf, the Atlantic, the Pacific. And all of this goes back to people in Texas determined to leave more than they found.
And
And
that's something that,
that's
you
proof.
know, that's all we can ask is everybody doing their part. It's just like when you're in your vehicle and you decide to throw something out the window. If everybody would do the right thing, it would leave a better place for every generation past this. So going back to the people that are, take that point of take a kid fishing. Who was the person in your life when you got to Texas where they were kind of that mentor of saltwater fishing and how you developed in the Texas coast?
Ralph Miller, good old Ralph.
Ralph Mouth.
I fished with also with a guy named Louis Seitz. He worked for me at the plant. Ralph worked for me at the plant. Those two guys had a profound impact. Now, I did a lot of Great Lake fishing, and we fished for walleye. And walleye are a lot like spotted sea trout in that um, they will congregate on structure, uh, sandbars, rock formations, whatever, and you can drift over them, and because the water in the lakes is Great Lakes is too deep to wade, but you become rather adept at what I call jigging, soft plastics on a jig head. Now, back in the beginning, when I started fishing the Great Lakes as a youngster, we didn't have soft plastic. Believe it or not, we didn't always have Bass Assassin. We didn't always have Kelly Wiggler.
Very
We
unfortunate.
always have Down South. Okay. But we did have a lot of lures like spinners and other small lures that would be like hard baits. We learned to jig, cast the lure out, let it sink, and hop it. Try to find what depth the fish are in and
Right.
target that depth, whether it's the bottom or the top of the water column. And soft plastics was an absolute revelation. They are to bay fishing in Texas, or our trout and redfish and flounder fisheries, like the Mojo spinning wing decoy is the dove hunting. Really, I mean, this came on as a revelation, as the Mojo duck, as the good old Phil Robertson, God rest his soul now. Um, he probably taught more people duck hunting than any other human being in the United States. And when I got to Texas, I just fell right into this drift and shell reefs and chunks of soft plastics. And
Now you did that right away?
I caught on pretty quick, yeah, because I was already using similar
Right.
lures, walleye fishing and smallmouth bass fishing. And so, the guys I was fishing with saying, you must have done this before. I said, no, but I've done some things that were similar.
Right.
And I think, every every outdoors person that I have observed, my own activities and watching Josh. So I remember it's I call it a continuum. We're forever developing. We're on a timeline. At first, we just want to catch fish, and then we want to catch all the fish, and then we want to catch the biggest fish, and then pretty soon we start to develop a bit of a conscience. And we not only want to enjoy those fish, but we want to make sure that there's enough of them left over so the next time we go out fishing, there's some fish left. And it's the same thing in deer hunting and dove hunting and duck hunting. And um, we end up, it's a pursuit to develop skill. And, first, when I first started fishing, I told you I used a willow switch. And then when I started using light tackle, of course, I have me a Zebco 303, boy. Good
I
old
think we all had one of those.
push button. And then I graduated into the uh, spinning reels. And then I mastered bait cast reels. And believe me, I made a mess of some reels along the way. We all did. If you won't admit to it, you're telling fib.
Absolutely.
And I fish with far better tackle today than I ever dreamed that I would be using. And the lines, the rods, the reel, everything that we use, the types of lures. I can honestly say that I used to miss a lot of bites because now I use rods and lines and reels that are so delicate. I mean, if a fish looks at a lure, I might feel it and I might hook. Okay, that's an exaggeration. But
Yeah.
uh, suffice to say that tackle has come a long way and has enabled us to speed up our progression, that timeline, that continuum as an angler. And we get out there and we enjoy fishing to the point that it becomes so important to us, we want to teach it to others. And that's why I became a guide more than anything. I was a guide for 10 years. And of course, uh, I was trying to do the conservation thing and guiding. And
Doesn't work out as well.
well, I insisted on it. And I could see our trout fishery beginning to dwindle. And the limit back then was 10, and I was trying to campaign for smaller bag limits so that the fish would last longer and we could catch more of them. Didn't mean we had to kill them all or eat them all, you know. I finally decided one day that uh, I would make the limit on my boat 5 spotted sea trout. The state limit was 10. And believe it or not, I lost one charter. Just
Wow.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
And
You know,
oh, I
one
had a
thing
guy
that's
call me up and he said, "I'd like to book a trip with you, but I kind of got a problem with this Just Keep 5 thing you're pushing." And I said, "Yeah, well, I can understand that. Now, what's your goal on this mission, booking a trip with me?" And he said, "Well, we've never caught a limit. We heard you're pretty good, and so we want to fish with you so we can get a limit." I said, "Well, that's a pretty good goal, you know." And let me tell you my personal goal for your trip. My personal goal is I would like you to catch 2 or 3 limits, and if you want, you can take a half a limit home with you. I'll fillet it, put it in a bag, and you can take it home and have a fish dinner. What do you think of that? The guy said, "Well, I don't think I could go with that." And I said, "Well, it's okay. I'll give you the number of what I consider some good teaching guides who will help you become a better fisherman."
I can only imagine you've had the conversation of, the limit's actually 10 though, right?
Well, they knew that. I would tell them that, but I would say, uh, my boats just keep 5. And I had people tell me that I was ruining fishing. And nonetheless, I had my mind made up and I stuck to my guns.
and look what
Hey,
happened.
guess what? The limit's 3 today. And ain't nobody going hungry.
No, it's not. You know, one of the things that just going back to when you think about learning and progressing as an angler, one of the things that I've found that was very important in developing my skill sets was looking at someone who actually knows how to fish and just mimicking everything that they do. And I remember when I'd go fishing with you, we would sit out there, and this was early on when I throw the soft plastics, and I would watch you. And when you popped your bait, I popped my bait. And then I started getting that feel for it. And then you start progressively, okay, now I know, when to pop my bait. I know when to do this. I know when to set the hook. I know what to do because I'm constantly mimicking someone who actually knows how to do it.
I tell you what, it's fishing has been a wonderful pastime for me, and I've been so fortunate through our publishing effort and through my industrial career. I had 30 years in industry before I decided that I wasn't going to work for other people anymore. I was going to work as a fishing guide for myself. And we got into the publishing thing, and maybe in the next segment, we can actually talk about how that came to pass. And one of the things that has been so rewarding to me was uh, getting to fish in Alaska, getting to fish in Canada. Uh, I got to fish a fly walleye, smallmouth bass, northern pike trip this past summer in August, just a couple months ago. And being able to fish all over the U.S. and the Atlantic and all the Atlantic coastal states and the Pacific coastal states and down into Mexico and South America and um, it's just been very rewarding to me mentally um, to be able to enjoy this wonderful sport all over the not the whole world, but quite a few parts of the world. Even got to fish in Europe.
So
Um,
what was your favorite fishing spot outside of Texas, outside of Pennsylvania? What was the favorite spot where you think back and it was just a trip for the ages?
Scott,
Alaska?
yep, because we were able to book some fly-in trips for uh, rainbow trout to very remote mountain lakes. Fly out in a float plane We caught Dolly Varden. We caught Arctic char. We floated the Kenai River. We floated in. We fished in drift boats in the mouths of the coastal rivers. We got to go out and fish for several different species of salmon and ocean run rainbow trout. And they call Alaska the Great Land. That's one of its nicknames. And I can tell you that it is indeed the Great Land. And, we actually fished alongside of bears that were also fishing. I mean, come on, where else could you do that? Okay. And so the black bear, he went out in the middle of the stream, and these silver salmon, some people call them Chinook, uh, they're going up the streams. Their life is done. They're at the end of their life cycle. They're going up to their home where they were hatched, and they're going to spawn. And the big old bear, he's right out in the middle of the stream, and the water's about a foot deep, and he's just sitting there on his haunches, and he sees the fish coming, and he just whap, knocks that fish out of the water up on the bank. He jumps up, runs over there, grabs the fish, and holds it in his hands like a fish sandwich and just starts gnawing on it. And we're standing there, we're fishing right alongside of him. And so, yeah, this is pretty cool. So I've had a lot of great adventures. Alaska, I would say, it is the last frontier. It is the great land. Anybody who can ever organize a trip, you need a week, and you need to fish the rivers, you need to fish the Pacific Ocean, you need to fish the remote mountain lakes if you can afford the fly-in trip. It's just wonderful. And I will always remember that, as in addition to uh, the wonderful fishing that we enjoyed, it was an eye-opening experience. You catch 2 silvers on the Kenai River. When you boat your second silver, whether you release it or harvest it, your rod goes in the rod holder and you're sitting there like this.
You wait.
You wait for the others in the party to get done. And the regulations book looks like the old Sears catalog,
Oh my
because
goodness.
they sometimes have to close the season during the middle of the season, depending how many fish are coming up the rivers. And they have devices sonar devices in the river for counting the fish that are migrating up, that are going to be spawning the year class of 2026. Those are the fish that are coming up there. And when you see the dedication to management and conservation, you get a big appreciation for why those fisheries are so productive.
Well, and two, they manage such a high commercial load that it's always fascinating to me when you see that conversation of like the domestic interest of like the residents of Alaska, the out of staters such as yourself, and then the commercial interest. Yeah, I've seen their regulations before, and I'm pretty good with government code. Man, it's deep.
Well,
Well,
we're going to ask
how
you.
much more we want to continue this discussion tonight. If you got anything you need me to hit in a couple of minutes, I'd be happy.
I got one more hard
Okay.
hitting question, and it'll be an easy one. What is your favorite fish to eat?
Spotted sea trout.
There you go. Well, Everett, we really appreciate you coming on. We're definitely going to do another segment because we want to get the story of how the magazine started, where it went from there. We appreciate the conservation because, like myself, my kids, they're going to be able to experience things that I was able to experience when I was younger. And, people like yourself that are a beacon of that conservation really helps us get to that point. So we appreciate you and we appreciate you getting on with us.
Well, guys, keep up the good work. I hope the podcast is a success, and I hope you're able to teach people to become better anglers and better stewards of the resource.
And make sure you take a kid fishing.
You got it. 100%. See you
All
guys.
right.